Yes, Femi Adesina is a Nigerian journalist, practiced electronic, radio, television, and print, where I spent the longest time. I guess by next year, it will be 40 years that I've been in journalism, straight from school. I've never done any other job other than journalism. It was while doing that job that I got to know the then Major General Buhari, who became candidate Muhammadu Buhari, and then eventually became President Muhammadu Buhari. When he emerged president, he invited me to serve as his advisor on Media and Publicity. I took on the assignment, and I was there for 8 years. The 8 years that he stayed in office as president, I was with him all the way. And if you permit some bit of bragging, that is the first person that will stay 8 years as a media advisor to a president in a democracy. It has never happened in Nigeria before. So I'm the first person to have stayed 8 years as advisor of Media and Publicity to a Nigerian president. So there is a certain narrative about President Muhammadu Buhari that I felt needed to be corrected. You know that in the build-up to his ascendancy to the president, a lot of people were demarketing him. 2003, when he first ran, 2007, 2011, before Nigerians put prejudice aside in 2015 and decided to vote him no matter what. What were some of the things they used to demarcate in religion? They said he was a religious bigot. Another thing was that he was a dictator. Then they also said he was a nepotist. Now, having worked with him in 8 years, I didn't see all that. Rather, I saw things that were contrary to all that. Religious bigot. Our first Christmas in government, he called me. He said, Adesina, I know you're a church person. Now, this Christmas, go and be with your family. When you come back, me too, I will take some leave. I will go and rest. And all through the 8 years, if you were a Christian, either Easter or Christmas, if he saw you around, he would ask, why are you not with your family? A bigot never behaves that way. A bigot only wants to hear about his own religion. So, in terms of bigotry, the image painted of President Buhari has been wrong, completely wrong. Then, in terms of dictatorship, you know, he first came as a military leader, and he himself would say, I was younger and I was ruthless. But in between his coming as a military leader and as a civilian president, there were 30 years. 30 years in which he had opportunity to reform, opportunity to become a Democrat, opportunity to see things from the democratic perspective. So, by the time he came back as a president, he was no longer an autocrat, if he ever was. Yes, I agree that under the Buhari regime, there was some measure of autocracy, but the country needed it at that time. When he now came back, even the garb was different. His first time he was in khaki. This other time he was in Bavarian Ghana when a lot of changes had happened. And then in terms of, he's an unkind person, doesn't care. Not true. Not true. I can tell you stories upon stories upon stories of how President Buhari showed care and concern about people. All these are in that book. That was why I felt I needed to document who the true Muhammadu Buhari is. Anybody that takes the time to read this book will see who the true Muhammadu Buhari is, as opposed to the myth that had been created to demarket him over the years when he was still running to president. The first I would like to share was actually in 2013, 2 years before he got to the presidency. In 2013, my mother passed away, and we were having a commendation service for her in Lagos. I was inviting people, and I addressed a letter, a card, an invitation card to Major General Muhammadu Buhari. I sent it to our correspondent. Then I was in the Sun newspapers. I was still deputy managing director, then later became managing director. So I sent it to Ismail Omepidon, who was our correspondent in Kaduna State. I said, can you please drop this in General Buhari's house? And I forgot about it. On the day of that event, I was by the gate to the facility we used, welcoming people. Then one SUV drove inside. So I followed the car to see who was in it and to welcome. When the door opened and I saw him, I screamed, "General, you're here!" He laughed. So yes, so I've come to pay my last respects to your mother. Somebody they called a religious bigot. It was a Christian service and he stayed all through. He was with us all through the service. President Buhari came to attend the final rites of passage for my mom, a Muslim, attended a Christian service, stayed with us throughout. Yet, they say he's a bigot. Will a bigot do that? Never. A bigot will never attend that kind of service, but because we were friends, senior friend and junior friend, he came and he attended. When he came as military head of state in 1983, I was a third-year student in the university. So you wouldn't say I didn't know what I was doing. I was a young man who knew what was good and what was not good. When he came, something about him just stuck with me. I got attracted to him and I followed that administration. He and Babatunde there were closely. I knew it was very good for Nigeria. It was good for our country. In fact, if that government had lasted for longer than the 20 months it lasted, it would have made such a salutary impact on Nigeria. So I was following that government. And later, when I left school, became a practicing journalist, and I started to write a weekly column, I began to point Nigerians in the direction of Muhammadu Buhari, saying, this man can make a difference in our country. 2003, I was writing to support him. 2007, during the build-up to that election, I had written, I used to write on Fridays then in the Sun newspaper. And then on Saturday morning, my phone rang. And when I picked it, he said, this is Muhammadu Buhari. I said, which Buhari? He laughed. He laughed. And I laughed too. And he said, I've been reading you for some time. I read the one you wrote yesterday. I'm calling to say thank you to you. He said, you must have the memory of an elephant. How do you recall all those things you are writing? And I told him, I've been following you for a long time. So he said, thank you. And that was how we began to talk fairly regularly. Any time I wrote about him, he would call me up, we would discuss the article like that. He didn't win in 2007, he didn't win in 2011, but I stayed with him. I continued to write to support him. Now in 2015, on the night that the results were declared, that day when Rubebe did that show earlier in the day, by night the final results came. 10 minutes past midnight, my phone rang. And the person said, can you please hold on for the president-elect? And then he came on the line and said, Adesina, I'm calling to say thank you to you. You have been with me all these years. People could have offered you millions of naira for your support, but you didn't follow them. You followed me that didn't give you 1 naira, that didn't give you a bottle of Coke. Thank you, and thank you. After I went off the line, I told my wife, I said, this man that is calling me 10 minutes past midnight, I hope he won't say, come and walk with me, because I didn't want to leave journalism. I was MD the Sun newspapers, I was president Nigeria Guild of Editors. I just was happy with what I was doing. But eventually it happened that I was invited to serve him. Why I took the appointment was because it would be hypocritical of me to have sold him to Nigerians for so long. And then he says, come and work with me, and I refused to go. So that was how I came to work for him and with him for 8 years. I'd just like to talk about his kindness, which people do not know. In our first year in office, precisely December 26, 2015, I lost a sister. She was a professor of dramatic arts in Obafemi Awolowo University. She was traveling on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, had an accident and died. Do you know that the following day, after that news broke that I had lost my sister, President was among those who personally called my line to offer his condolences. He condoled with me and said I should please pass the condolence to the entire Adesina family. For me, it was very touching. After he had attended our mother's burial and he offered that condolence with me, he almost could never go wrong in my eyes. and let me also tell another story. We were in Rwanda for the Commonwealth Head of Government Mission. And the then Minister for Women Affairs, Pauline Tallinn, had a fall, I think, in the bathroom. And it was a bad fall. She landed in the hospital. I think her back had issues. When the news got to Mr. President, immediately he got up, took us, some of his aides, and we went to the hospital to see Pauline Tallinn. He offered his best wishes, and he gave a directive that if she needed to be evacuated, either back to Nigeria or to anywhere for better medical attention, it should be done immediately. That's how caring the man is. The final one, let me tell you, if you remember Colonel Abubakar Dangiwa Umar, he was one of the IBB boys, who was governor of Kaduna State under the military regime of Babangida. He told me a story. He said he would never have become a major in the Nigerian army. When it was time for them to be promoted from captain to major, he had gone abroad for a course, an armored course. So when they promoted his contemporaries, they didn't promote him. When he heard that he had been bypassed for promotion, he was furious, and he said he wrote to resign his commission. President Buhari was then military secretary. I think he was a brigadier then. He was the military secretary. When that case got to his attention, the president took it up personally and said, this man was on course, therefore you can't bypass him for promotion. Colonel Dangiwa told me that within 3 weeks he got his promotion. So that is the kind of person Buhari is. He would take up other people's issues and treat them personally. Well, one thing about President Buhari was that he was so frugal, so staid, so thrifty, that anybody would think twice before discussing anything compromising with him. One day, I went to see him at home in the night. At his waiting room were just myself and Ambassador Baba Gana Kingibe. It was Ambassador Kingibe who pointed out to me, he said, see this vast mirror, see this vast waiting room, just 2 of us. He said it didn't used to be so. Under previous administrations, the place would be like a market till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Wheeler dealers who came to see the president for one favor or the other, those who come to cut business, those who come to offer things that the president will make some financial gains from. He said, well, with this one, you dare not even ask him. You dare not tell him. That's the way he was. He never cut corners. Or this was a man who was oil minister for 3¼ years. Do you hear that there is an oil block to his name? Not even a petrol station to his name. He was that way. And under him, corruption was fought stridently. You just need to look at the number of convictions that you had up till 2015 and look at the number of convictions that came between 2015 and 2023. Almost times 4, times 5 of convictions that came before he got to power. So it shows you that quietly or sure-footedly, He was fighting corrupt practices in the country. Yes, the book, Working with Buhari, Reflections of a Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, 2015 to 2023, is all about portraying Muhammadu Buhari as a human being, flesh and blood, as opposed to a man of iron and steel that Nigerians thought he was. Anybody that lays hand on that book, I will advise them, please read the preface first. In the preface, I explained what I was doing in the book. And I explained what I was not doing. I told them this book is not about monetary policy, it's not about economic policy, it's not about foreign policy, it's not about all those hardcore of government. Rather, they're about the software of governance, software of Muhammadu Buhari. And that's all about. So people who come to write on economic policy or foreign policy, on monetary policy and all that, you wouldn't find that in the book. Rather, you will find what were the things that actuated Muhammadu Buhari in taking decisions. Why did he take decisions that he took? Was he an ethnic bigot, like some people will say? They talk of nepotism under him. Let me share this experience. When he replaced the leadership of the DSS, Department of State Service, he removed Ita Ekpeyong, who was a southerner, and brought Lawal Daura, who was a northerner. When he called me and gave me the new name to announce, by then, it was about 3 months into that government, and people were beginning to complain that the appointments were lopsided in favor of the North. So when he gave me the name of Lawal, I said, Mr. President, people are beginning to talk. You removed a man from South-South. Why didn't you put another person from South-South? He now told me, he said, before making an appointment, there is a process. A team is set up to do a search for the best person to occupy that position. Now, that search team would likely bring up 3 names. He said, now, if I bypass the first person because of his religion or where he came from or because of language or ethnicity or anything, he said Allah will judge me on the last day. So that was what actuated him in taking decisions. The best got it, irrespective of where that best came from. Nigeria may not have been right for it at that time, but that was what guided his decision-making. In 8 years, I rarely saw President Buhari approve number 2 or number 3. It usually will be number 1. Because he says, if I bypass the first person, the best person in that such exercise, because of religion or ethnicity or whatever, say, Allah will judge me. He will ask me why I was unfair to that person. So that is one thing I want people to know in terms of so-called nepotism. When he needed to make any appointment and a search has been done, he would just ask them, have you done everything you need to do? Have you done the due diligence? Most times when he approves, I will see the paper recommending that person still attached to it. And I will read the paper. I will see the justification for that person being appointed. It's a mixture of all these styles. It's called eclectic style. One in which you have notes you have taken, one you use the power of recall, one so you will use, you will dwell on experience and all that. So it's a mixture of all that. There were some things we passed through, there were some things he said that I will jot down, saying one day this may come in useful. And truly after we left government, I just took my notes. All the things I've written down over the years were useful in writing that book. I wasn't sure whether I would write or not, but as a journalist and as a writer, the possibility was always there that I would write. So after we left government, I traveled outside the country for a number of weeks to first depressurize myself, and that was when I began to write. I have a piece that I wrote, and that piece features in Working with Buhari. Very humorous man. You hardly leave President Buhari without cracking your ribs. You always see one funny thing or the other. I know that whenever I went to his office, he laughs, I also laugh. Whenever I went to his office, the security detail who will serve as the secretary, when I come, I will say, "You and this Baba can laugh." Because there's always one funny thing or the other that he will say. And that was why I wrote the piece, Buhari Beyond the Iron and Steel, in which I put together all his jokes, his comic side and all of that. So I think it's an interesting side for people to know, and they'll get to read it in that book. We are expecting something I'll call a showpiece. This is the first time President Buhari will be coming to Abuja since he left in May last year. And in the same hall, you have a former president and a sitting president. You can't have it better than that. And then you have a former military head of state as the chairman, and you have a former top military commander, General aide as the co-chairman. You have a former President Goodluck Jonathan in the audience, Yemi Osinbajo, Vice President in the audience. So it promises to be a showpiece. I'll advise journalists to aspire to become authors. In other parts of the world, the best books are written by journalists. The greatest best-selling books are written by journalists. So I'll advise our young journalists, one, to strive to be the best they can, and to also aspire to become authors. It's very important. Working with Buhari, Reflections of his Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, 2015 to 2023. That's the book. And the launch comes up on Tuesday, January 16 at the Transcorp Hotel in Abuja, precisely at the Congress Hall. It's a 10 a.m. event, and all those people are mentioned. President Bola Tinubu as special guest of honor. President Buhari, former, as guest of honor. General Yakubu Gowon as chairman of event. General Aide as co-chairman of event. Alhaji Mohammed Ndini as chief launcher. And so many.